What's the most baddest thing you've accidentally said in the heat of the moment? Big burly former marine/mercenary from Iraq was back stateside, huge F mountain of man. We came to face each other in one of the narrow corridors of the office where one of us was gonna have to turn sideways. Neither of us turned, but we stopped. I'm 6 feet 1, 260, and he still towered over me. He was a nice guy, but still a little conditioned. I guess you could say, or mentally unhinged. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "You feeling froggy?" It truly was like something out of a movie. Without blinking I replied, "You better jump." We both cracked up and turned sideways, while the office breathed a collective sigh of relief. I'm a 4th grade teacher, and one day I was up at the board and struggling to remember how to spell a particular word. I was trying to make light of it, telling the kids that sometimes adults need help with spelling too. One student replied, "It is because you were poorly educated. But don't worry, we are poorly educated too." Double whammy. At work, project management undercut and mismanaged a project so badly, they pushed getting minimum viable product out with the goal to roll out improvements later. Product released, they all patted themselves on the back and moved on. Then that minimum viable product broke. In a meeting we had with our directors about how it's so broken, and the cost to fix it etc. No cost too big, and limited manpower etc. I asked how come we couldn't afford to do it right, but we can afford to do it twice? I'll never forget the moment a family walked into the local pub I was working at while I was working. This big king of the grill, bald alpha patriarch dad type, and his wife and kids came through. I said, "Welcome, where would you like to sit?" And he snapped back, "Well, a table would be nice." And without missing a beat at all I replied, "Actually we usually sit on the chairs here." I'll never forget the satisfaction of that moment or the look on his face, haha. My uncles were bitching about my dad, so I walked into the conversation and told them it wasn't polite to talk about people behind their backs. My uncle turned to me and said I shouldn't interrupt when the men are speaking, and completely out of character I replied, "I don't see any men in here. Boy did I get some shit that day, but that's how I knew I won that exchange." I worked in cell phone sales for a few years, and a woman came in with a fairly new flip phone. This was 2018, we just still sold them. She was complaining cause one of the sides of the screen was dangling off, and said she didn't do anything, it just snapped, and demanded a new phone. I told her, "That looks like physical damage and we don't have any coverage for that, since you didn't buy a phone protection warranty." She insisted it wasn't physical damage and the phone just sucks and broke itself. She started freaking out and calling me all kinds of names and swinging her phone in my face, and then the top half of the phone literally snapped off and landed on the counter in front of me. I just looked her in the eyes and said, "Well, that was definitely physical damage." She lost her shit at my comment, and it was weirdly satisfying. I didn't realize the nature of my comment when I wrote it, but in high school, one of my teachers did end of the year anonymous evaluations. Everyone hated him, and I understood why, but I still did well in his class. I wrote, "I don't have any critiques about your teaching, but I think you should work on being a better person." Working retailer Karen once told me she hoped I die. I was so into work mode that I blankly responded, "I mean, we all die. That's not much of a threat." Maybe it was my lack of intimidation or blank stare, but that really shut her up. When I was 12, my older sister had a boy over for Thanksgiving dinner. She dated lots of douches, but this guy took the cake. Big, brash, annoying dickhead who was rude to her and basically everyone. As we sat down for dinner, before we were about to say what we were thankful for, he says inaudible more and grunts, "Huh, looks like I'm seated at the head of the table. Must be important," with a huge shit-eating grin. Without pausing I gesture to my dad seated opposite him and said, "Actually my dad is at the head of the table. You're the asshole." My mom scolded me for swearing at the table, but years later told me her and my dad thought it was hilarious. I was around 17 or 18 and getting my first filling at the dentist. They pumped me up with nitrous oxide for pain and to help me relax during the procedure. Dentist came back and asked me, "How are you feeling?" All I said was, "I don't," and he lost his shit and cracked up for what seemed like 20 minutes before he could pull himself together. I also started cracking up because of the laughing gas, and his laugh was infectious. So we were both just sitting there in the room laughing and all his assistants came by and were very confused lol. Around the time I was 12, I was at a family party with my dad and aunts/uncles. My dad told me that one of my uncles owned several bars. My response? Oh, it's good that he got into a business that he knows something about. I had no idea what I really was saying. I thought I was giving him a compliment. This one had a little setup, but I think it's funny enough to share. At a family vacation, my grandmother was giving me grief for not remembering her birthday. I've never been good with birthdays. After telling me it was the password to her iPhone, she wanted me to take a picture with it, which is why I needed the password. While she was distracted, I opened up the settings, changed her password to my birthdate, and then set her phone down. Cue 15 minutes later, she's trying to get into her phone and it's not working. Suspecting mischief, she grumpily asks me if I've changed the password to her phone in front of our entire family. I admit that I did. Well, what is it? She asked impatiently. It's my birthdate. She sat there in stunned silence for about 15 seconds, not being able to remember my birthday before our family exploded laughing. Was a good time. We had a overly dramatic neighbor who always claimed she was sick and dying. My mom came to see my kids in the middle of battling stage 4 lung cancer. The neighbor pulled her. Hi Rita, so glad to see you. Did Jason tell you that I'm dying? My mom looked right at her, smiled and said me too, dear, but not today. Never more proud of her. About 25 years ago, I was in grade 9 and my parents bought me a pair of Air Maximum. I'm a female, but I had picked a pair of Air Maximum that were supposed to be for males, because I preferred the color of the shoes. I was super pumped to get those shoes. We didn't have lots of money, and it was a pretty extravagant purchase. Anyway, I was at our local shopping center and I ran into a group of guys I went to high school with. They were a real bunch of assholes that thrived on dumping on other people. One of the guys had on the same pair of shoes and said to me, "Do you know you're wearing men's shoes?" To which I quickly replied, "Then why the F are you wearing them?" The other guys pissed themselves laughing and it still stands out in my mind after all these years. Oh, this reminds me of mine, actually also female, in grade 9. I was using a men's deodorant in the change room and someone asked me why, and the whole room was silent, but for background changing noises, and because I like the smell, and for whatever reason I got most of my class agreeing with me. It doesn't translate as well written, but it made me feel cool at the time. I was given a curveball question, and managed to stand my ground, and get backed up, when I didn't expect it. This was back in my junior year of college. At the beginning of the semester I was introducing myself to my very intimidating biochemistry professor. Guy was a genius, but also a hard ass. Students were all terrified to ask him questions, because he was known for grilling people, and if they hadn't made enough effort beforehand he'd send them out of his office to learn on their own. As I walked into his office he was sorting through some boxes, and made a really sarcastic comment regarding stuffing me in the box, and shipping it off somewhere. He looked up for my response and I just blurted out without thinking I wouldn't mind going somewhere nice. Dude laughed so hard it actually startled me a little. We got along pretty well for the remainder of the semester, so it all worked out really well. It's amazing what a little laughter can do to ease tension. There's no way you're this much of an asshole naturally. You must go home and practice. I said this to a coworker who was throwing a fit and bullying a quieter coworker because he was pissed off. He had a habit of just being a giant douche anytime things didn't go his way. This comment pissed him off so much he just stormed into his office and stayed there the rest of the day. Win for the rest of us. At work at a company meeting, someone was presenting something cool they volunteered to work on and finished. They then explained things they thought they could do better in a self-deprecating way, and a bunch of other people started railing into his work with petty criticism. It was definitely good work, though, and a thought just hit me, so I blurted it out. Sometimes done is the best feature. A bunch of people laughed, and then the criticism stopped. People gave him kudos and we moved on. Not really badass, but I was surprised this thought somehow came out fully formed, like it was some phrase I've been saying for decades. I guess I was just realizing how many people don't finish anything they start. So done suddenly seemed like a pretty damn good feature. Give the man some credit for finishing the damn thing. IDK about badass, but years ago I worked at a Hard Rock cafe, and we often had pre-shift server meetings outdoors on a patio, and my wild boss was droning on about us selling more overpriced plastic cups. I was staring off at the spinning globe on top of the building that says save the planet on it. I interrupted my boss by blurting out, if Hard Rock is trying to save the planet, why do we waste so much paper? Which was really directed at my managers, who had a hard-on for printing out stupid memos. They somehow didn't realize it was about them specifically, and passed the comment up the food chain, which ended up resulting in the entire company changing their payroll system to paperless, globally. As a reward I was given a pin shaped like a light bulb that said bright idea on it. Thanks I guess. I was crazy about this dude. He was intelligent, hot, funny, and a bit older. After a few weeks of dating he said he wasn't ready for a commitment. I told him to come pick up his book from my place, and not to reach out again as it hurt too much. I was that into him. So he comes to my apartment, I go to hand him the book, and begin to shut the door. He puts his foot in the way to stop it, and says I don't know what to do. I'm not ready, but I can't stop thinking about you. Moving my hand off the door, I hand him the book anyways, and said then pick me up at 7. Anyways now we are married. I already posted here, but I just thought of another story. There was this one extremely attractive girl in my COMM 101 class in college. One day, for a project where we interviewed other students, I was partnered with her. We ended up not finishing our questions in class, so I asked her if I could meet her somewhere to finish interviewing her. She said yes. Fast forward to the next day, I meet her after her dance group finishes rehearsal. I knock through the last few questions, and the final one which I ask is what do you perceive the future to hold? She replies I don't even know what I'm having for dinner tonight. I have no idea what the future holds. So I say well, if you don't know what you're having for dinner, do you want to have dinner with me? She laughed, said yes, and though we only hooked up that night, I still look back on that day as one of the best dating stories I've had yet. I had a surgery, and when I woke up, the nurse was really cute, so I started flirting with her, with no success. I had a second surgery, and when I woke up, it was the same cute nurse. My first words to her were, how many surgeries do I have to have before I get your phone number? We've been married 8 years now. A long time ago I was walking down a side street in a medium-sized town with my girlfriend. A car was parked ahead, with the front of the car facing us as we approached. I could see 2 kids, maybe in their late teens, and instantly could tell they were likely going say something as my GF was rather attractive. As soon as we come up next to them, I hear hey baby, ditch the zero, and come hang with a hero. I could feel my blood boil, but I kept my cool, and calmly said sorry buddy, I'm not gay, and don't call my girlfriend a zero. The dude's friend started laughing at him, and my girlfriend made a sarcastic crying face, then we both started to laugh.